and he that is without a wife may borrow of his neighbor. There is no law, no lawyer's fees, all men are free from fury, for everyone does what he please, without a judge or jury. The summertime is warm, they say, the winter ne'er the colder. They have no landlord's rent to pay, each man is a freeholder. You that are free to cross the seas make no more disputation. In Lubberland you'll live at ease with pleasant recreation. The captain waits but for a gale of prosperous wind and weather, and then they will soon hoist up the sail. Come haste away together. Anybody want to go live in Lubberland?
I was with you until the part about sharing your neighbor's wife.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like they've got a real vigorous feminist thought process going on there. No.
The Fortunate Isles, Arcadia, Shambhala, Valhalla, Elysian Fields, Avalon, Summerland, Shangri-La, Eden, the Peaceable Kingdom, the New Jerusalem. These are all utopias. Every place I've just listed, and more, hundreds more that we could talk about, represents the human longing not just for a better world, but for a great world, an ideal world. Sometimes we've located it in the past, in a more innocent time, like Eden or Greece's golden age. Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot for one brief shining moment. That was Spamalot. Spamalot, that's what it is. Yeah. Sometimes we've placed our utopias in the present, but in some place that very few can reach, hidden away from corruption, so that only the most worthy need even bother trying to get there, like Shangri-La or Shambhala and the other Buddhist Baals. Most commonly, we put our utopias in the afterlife. We may suffer now, but that great come and get it day awaits us, and the righteous will be rewarded, the laborer will find rest, the warrior will lay down his arms. But sometimes, and this is what we started talking about, jabbers, more often than most of us probably know, we've tried to create our utopias from scratch in the here and now. And we've all got stereotypes of what that is in our heads, whether it's a hippie commune or maybe we watched Wild Wild Country. But utopianism has been attempted by everything from a few dozen people on a few acres to mass-scale utopian projects, the new Soviet man in Russia, or the Great Leap Forward in China, or Volgemeinschaft, the People's Community in the Third Reich. Of course, yeah, I saw a cringe. It's not lost on you that those three large-scale examples I've just cited all involved mass murder and the elimination of freedoms, and that's no coincidence. Not that every utopia has to have that, but that they're offering a blueprint for a utopian society, for an ideal society, is usually critical to fascism and authoritarianism, because the arrival of an earthly paradise is worth a lot of sacrifices along the way. Not just my sacrifices, but yours, all for the greater good of the community. And it's difficult to read the history of utopias, large and small, without becoming cynical. It was the English writer Thomas More who coined the term utopia in his 1516 novel of the same name. Do any of you happen to know what it actually means, translated from the Greek? Utopia? Probably you can, what? You can probably figure out the topia part maybe a little bit.
Good place or no place.
No place, that's right. The U means no, and topos is place in Greek. So even the person who gave us the word utopia was kind of sending a sly little message that it doesn't exist anywhere.
That's cool. So cool.
Still, over the next few sessions, I want us to kind of set aside our cynicism a little bit, particularly now in the face of what I think most of us would say is pretty imminent environmental catastrophe and some pretty alarming trends in global politics. I think we need to be able to hope that a better world is possible, and we need the determination to work for it. So each of the next 3 days is going to be a pretty discrete kind of what I'm doing. Today I'm going to talk about these kind of mythical and legendary utopias. because I think that they tell us something about our deepest longings. I mean, we build our legends and our myths and our religions around what we really long for. Tomorrow we'll be talking about some of the real world efforts and thinkers behind utopian attempts. And then Thursday, actually, we're going to spend some time with Ursula Le Guin, whose book, or is it Le Guin? I don't know. Whose book, The Dispossessed, we're also going to be discussing. Again, I want us to just be thinking about what we really long for when we long for a perfect world and where those desires come from. And is there any way to have those things that we desire? Is it just cloud cuckoo land, or is there something holier about the longings we have? You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Or thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Did I just lose power again? I can talk pretty loud if necessary. So now that I've said all that, I want to get to the prizes before they completely melt. You know, it's my tradition to try to do some trivia, partly just to bribe people to come, but and it's fun for me to come up with the questions. And the prizes are thematic, so I would like to apologize in advance for the fact that half of them are chocolate, and I've kept them cold as long as I can, and I even brought paper towels. So if you get melted chocolate on your hands, please feel free to use the paper towels. So I put together a utopian Spotify list. Some of you participated in this endeavor on Facebook, just asking people for their submissions. And I'm going to read you a section of lyrics, and I want you to tell me the song. If you know the artist too, you will impress us further, but you won't get a second prize. Tess, are you willing to help me, or do you just want to sit there and try to win things? Do not shout out the answer. I asked her if she would help me spot who raises their hand first. Every year I say, please don't shout out the answer, and people do it anyway. Please just raise your hand. Okay. You will see all of these prizes are intended to represent something that our theoretical utopia might need, or you might want in your utopia. Okay, question 1. Oh, I've been smiling lately, dreaming about the world as one, and I believe it could be. Someday it's going to come.
Actually was only partly listening. It's Cat Stevens.
Yes, the song, do you know?
The name of the song.
Out on the edge of darkness, there lies a... Yes. That's right. I'm sorry.
You can have it, I wouldn't have gotten it. But as soon as it said Cat Stevens.
Tess, can you at least pass out the prizes so I don't have to keep going back and forth? Okay, she gets kisses because we need some love. And some utopias, it's a little freer than others. Okay, question 2. Where troubles melt like lemon drops away above
Big Rock Canyon Mountain.
No.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
Yes. Okay. Smarties, because everybody gets a good education in Utopia. Okay. Everyone is helpful. Everyone is kind on the road to blank. Everyone is lucky. Everyone is so kind on the road to... I see there's Lucy. I'm trying to think of more of the lyrics. Yeah, you're so close. I'm going to give it to you. It's Shambhala, which it's another name. Dove bars for peace. In this world, we're just beginning to understand the miracle of living. Baby, I was afraid before, but I'm not afraid anymore. This was playing earlier. This was
Heaven is a place on earth.
That is correct. You get good and plenty, which I think that's horrible. I'm sorry. I hear babies crying.
Okay. Let me not make a dumb mistake this time. It's yeah, it's What a Wonderful World.
That is correct.
Yes.
And I say to myself, you get 2 packs of Juicy Fruit for your agrarian paradise.
Yes. Thank you.
And the river flows from the throne of God. This is maybe a more Audiofeed Cornerstone crowd specific one. And the river flows from the throne of God, passing by the tree of life. And in this place no candle burns, for the Lamb shall be our light. See the holy city coming down from heaven. Here there will be no tears, no night. We will reign with him in raiment shining bright. Honey, if you're the only one that knows it, go ahead and take the candy.
I'm trying to remember the name of it.
And we say,
I know the song and I know the artist.
come through. And he says, my reward is with me. We all say, come, Lord. And he says, we all when we said, I am the first and last. It's Terry Taylor, soon. Is the name of the song. And it's beautiful. Okay, faith is the key. Open the doors and for them. There's room for all amongst those who are loved the most. There's room for hopeless sinners. All right, people get ready. That's the name. You do know the song, right? People get ready. It's been done by both Curtis Mayfield and Bob Marley. These may just, okay.
And Rod Stewart.
Here's an easy one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. Yes. Yeah. I should have left out the word imagine. What did I already give you? Let me give you something that's different. Here, give him some Smarties too. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, Margie. That is correct. You get the whatchamacallit because Utopia is hard to define. All right, we have one more. I'm afraid this is going to be hard. I'm hoping there's a fan in the room of this band. There's a party. Everyone is there. Everyone will leave at exactly the same time.
Talking heads, it's heaven.
You suggested
I
this on my
suggested it.
Facebook wall. Good for you.
It's all coming back.
Coming right around. Okay, very good. Okay, so we already, in Jabbers this morning, we already talked about some of the components of our ideal society, so I won't start with that question. I will tell you, if you just add an E to the beginning of utopia, you change the meaning of the word from no place to good place. A little pun there. As I said this morning, we're going to talk about some of the religious and mystical utopias before we get to our more pragmatic enterprises tomorrow. And I've already told you about one, Lubberland, even though that was sort of tongue-in-cheek. It's a fool's paradise, and lots of different cultures have their own version of fool's paradise. But even there, some of the themes are ones that came up earlier. I mean, the line between satirical and real utopian ideals is pretty thin. So in Lubberland, you don't have to labor for your food. Because there's food everywhere. There's fruits and cakes and pies, and your meat actually comes to you. There's no ruler. I mean, there's the king of knaves and the queen of sluts, but that basically means, it's just chaos. A knave is a fool, and it says there's no judges, no juries, no legal disputes. Everyone lives as he pleases. The weather is beautiful, and if you don't have a wife, you can borrow your neighbor's. So you've got abundant food, not having to work to survive, freedom to make your own choices, shared goods, and a little touch of free love. Pretty close to a lot of utopian endeavors. We're going to take a quick tour of some other utopias, though, and I'm hoping at the very least you'll have fun with this. I don't know any more about I've done a ton of reading recently, but aside from that, I don't know any more about this than anyone else. So if you know things that I don't know, or just feel free to interrupt or raise your hand or whatever. Anyway, let's start with one you all know, and I don't mean the biblical heaven. I want to talk about Valhalla first. Many of us are more familiar with Valhalla now just because of the Marvel Universe. It is an enormous hall in a grove of trees located in Asgard, which is one of the 9 homeworlds in the Norse religion. It's ruled over by Anthony Hopkins, and it's the home to the elite who've died in battle. Not all of those who die in battle get to go to Valhalla, which I didn't know until I read about it. I just assumed.
Is Anthony Hopkins or is it Odin?
I was a joke. It was a joke, Kevin. It's not a good joke. Not everyone who dies in battle goes to Valhalla. Half of them go to Folkvanger, which is ruled over by Freya, Odin's wife. It's not a bad place. It also is an enormous hall. It's out in a field. It's just sort of like 3-star rather than the 5-star accommodations. Valhalla is like the ceiling is made out of gold shields. The warriors spend every day fighting each other, but at the end of the day, all of their wounds are healed so they can go back to it the next day. Partly that's for fun, partly that's for training for Ragnarok. Every night they have a huge feast. They feast on this boar that regenerates every day. They get liquor that flows from the udders of the goat, never runs dry, and they are served by Valkyries. Endless feasting and drinking, beautiful women, manly camaraderie, and battle with no real stakes. That's the Norse version of a heavenly reward, at least for men, the brave. It's interesting, though, to me, at least, that the Greek reward for soldiers, for those who die bravely, is very different. Do you know where they went? Anybody know the name of it? I think we see, what's his name, Russell Crowe go there at the end of Gladiator. It's Elysian Fields, or this one has several names, Elysium, or the Fortunate Isles, or White Island. Homer describes it as the world's end, and here it's an end to your labors. There's no snow, there's no storms. Everybody's, the Okeanos, one of the ocean gods, sends out gentle breezes every day. I think C.S. Lewis drew directly on the imagery of Elysian Fields to make his version of the world's end in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And there the inhabitants, they make music, they play sports, they create art. Hesiod said they live lives untouched by sorrow, happy heroes for whom the grain-giving earth bears honey-sweet fruit, flourishing thrice a year, far from the deathless gods. Plutarch adds that in Elysium there are moderate rains, soft winds, good soil for plowing and planting, but also a natural abundance of foods that you don't even have to cultivate. So the Greek warriors, they don't want to battle forever. They just want to rest in the Fortunate Isle of Elysium. So again, we've got abundant food, beautiful weather, no need to labor unless you really want to. If you want to go plant things, you can, but you don't have to. Time for art and play. But I think maybe of the places that I read about, my favorite is the Egyptian afterworld Aru, the Field of Reeds. Anyone ever read about this? It's close to the Christian vision of heaven, but it has more emphasis on dogs, which is part of the reason I liked it. The Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians thought they lived in the perfect place, so their afterworld is just Egypt, their own home, a little perfected, but you may know it's quite a trial. The afterlife includes tests, and you get cart weighed, you have to get by certain figures in the underworld. But finally, your soul is brought, if you pass through all of that, your soul is brought across the waters to the Field of Reeds. And here you find all the loved ones that have gone before you. Not just your family and your friends, but any pets that you have lost are there waiting for you. And your house and your yard and all that you left behind is there. Your favorite tree for you to relax under. And you pass this eternity in the presence of the gods, eating the cake of Osiris. The crops there grew to extraordinary heights. Trees bore succulent fruit. Transfigured souls who all appeared physically perfect and in the prime of life want for nothing. And they have this one thing I want to tell you about called Shakti dolls. The Egyptians believed that things that were buried with you, you could take into the afterlife. So a Shakti doll, if you used this wooden figure, you would have buried with you And when you went into the afterlife, there was work to do, but if you didn't want to do the work, you could just have your Shakti doll do it for you, and then you could go read a book with your dog under a tree, take a walk, whatever you want to do. The Egyptian afterlife was perfect because you were given back all the things that you have lost, which I think is really a pretty beautiful image, frankly. And maybe in all the ancient world, there's no more comforting kind of image attached to the afterlife. And again, food, rest from labor, natural beauty, and love. I thought we should talk for a minute about the Muslim vision of the afterlife, which I've heard surprisingly little about as a Christian, considering how many Muslims live, in my area. I think we only hear it sort of stereotyped sometimes, the whole 72 virgins thing. It's called Jannah, yes. And it's a garden of material delights. The Muslim afterlife contains more, maybe like the visions of the New Jerusalem, more architectural beauty and more like riches than just the kind of natural delights of some of the other places that I read about. Constantly flowing water and lush gardens, which, especially for people who have lived in a desert climate, I'm sure sounded very appealing. No hurt, no sorrow, no fear, no shame. Every wish is fulfilled. Men have young women to attend them. Women have young men to attend them. Everyone is of the same age in the afterlife. Everybody's 33, and everybody is of equal standing. Their life is one of bliss. They wear sumptuous robes and bracelets and perfumes and have exquisite banquets and recline on couches. Everything that you've longed for in this life, you get in Jannah. And I'm going to kind of skim through some of these. I keep forgetting that my watch is not working. Anwen, I was trying to figure out how to pronounce it. It's the pre-Christian wealth and British conception of the afterlife. And this is funny, one of the sites I was reading had this in it. It said, as permanent rest homes go, it has a 5-star rating. Amenities include a magic cauldron presided over by 9 maidens, which has total restorative properties, a fountain of wine, splendid gardens and orchards, excellent bird spotting facilities, unique weather settings which render central heating obsolete. It's eternal youth, no disease, no hunger, and great beauty. And then the Irish version of this is Magmel, which is actually not just an afterlife. You can get there if you're brave enough and adventurous enough. Last year, when I was talking about animal theology, I mentioned the voyages of St. Brendan, because he had gone to an island where there were talking dogs. St. Brendan was supposed to have made it to Magmel. Or you can get there by a glorious death. But in any case, Magmel is another island, kind of lush paradise, no sickness or death, eternal youth and beauty, music and pleasure. But unlike the other places we've talked about, there's no food or drink in Magmel because you don't want it. You're not thirsty and you're not hungry, so why bother? And then there's Summerland, which Stephen and I just saw the movie Midsummer. I don't know if I would recommend it to everyone here. It certainly was, I mean, the visual imagery was amazing, but it's set in a pagan community. Summerland is the afterlife for Wiccans, and so sometimes they will say to each other, I will see you again in Summerland. It's like the Christian version of I'll meet you in the morning. And it's viewed as a place of eternal summer, a pastoral place with woods, parks, and gardens. Even the happy hunting ground is a real afterlife vision, even though, I've always kind of heard it like a jokey little expression. The Plains Indians' vision of the afterlife is a place where game is plentiful, everyone has what he or she wants or needs, harmony between everyone. Now, a few of the places I mentioned or in the beginning, I said there are places that aren't afterlife. They are alleged to be here now, but just very hard to get to. And that is mostly the Buddhist Bayuls. The idea is that there were these places set apart, kind of hidden away from the world, communities where the inhabitants who are holy people are preparing to help us when things get bad enough for these veils to be revealed. And then, like the Avatar will come and save the world when things get bad enough. Shambhala, the song by Three Dog Night, Shambhala is about one of those veils from a time when a lot of rock art, a lot of artists were really interested in Hinduism and Buddhism. Shangri-La is another one of those. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Lost Horizons. It's good. It's got Ronald Colman in it. Somewhere in the 1930s. About a group of English explorers who make it to Shangri-La. Shambhala is laid out like a lotus blossom. The city itself is laid out like an 8-petal blossom surrounded by a chain of mountains. The people there are highly enlightened, so there's no war or injustice. And this has been taken with deadly seriousness by some people. So the Soviets, in the 1920s, they tried to have an expedition to Shambhala because they wanted to use Buddhist mysticism to, like the spiritual techniques, to create perfect communists. But the expedition kind of fell apart before it ever got started. And neo-Nazi mysticism, in which they believe that Hitler did not die in Germany, has him fleeing to Shambhala rather than dying in Germany. And I think in Shambhala, Hitler would be able to live forever. So maybe they think he's still there. Other places we could speak of are like Arcadia, which is an unspoiled, harmonious wilderness inhabited by mythical creatures and unspoiled humans. So if you want to hang out with naiads or dryads or pans or fauns, you go to Arcadia. Or Avalon, the place where King Arthur went to heal from his wounds, where people live to be 100 or more. Or China's Peach Blossom Spring, an ethereal utopia where people live in harmony with nature and are kind and hospitable, but if you ever leave Peach Blossom Spring, you can't get back in. A little bit similar to Brigadoon. Anybody ever seen the musical Brigadoon? No? Yeah? I used to listen to the soundtrack all the time when I was a teenager. It's a mythical place in the Scottish Highlands, and it is based on a real myth that only appears every 100 years. And if you visit it during the time that it appears, you can stay if you choose to. But if anyone who lives there leaves, the whole place disappears forever. Like they never get to come back. And then there's Camelot. And Camelot is a mixture of a little bit of real history and a whole lot of myth. But what's interesting about Camelot is kind of what utopian values they had of chivalry and friendship and using might for right and impartial justice. And we all know how that played out in some versions anyway. So again, this may all seem like mere fantasy, but aren't most of those places just exaggerated versions of the things that we all long for? So we know that we can't have an end to disease and we can't live forever, but could we at least have universal health care? We know that we can't have pies growing on trees, but could we at least try to have an end to hunger? Can't we have a work-life balance that allows for people to have time for art and play and music? So tomorrow we're going to look at some of the early utopian writings and the actual attempts to bring utopia into the real world, at least on a small scale, and see how that worked out. But I want to close with a little more poetry, although this one doesn't rhyme in the translation. And this is another one of the absurdist utopias, the fool's paradises, because as long as people have been dreaming of utopia, other people have been making fun of those dreams. And It was actually fun reading about the different versions of Fool's Paradises because they're all different. The British version is called cocaine, and not spelled like the drug. But one of the things in cocaine is that nuns and monks are getting along like crazy. The Netherlands has Lullikerland, the Italians have Paese della Coena, the Swedish have Loverland. Loverland is the Swedish Fool's Paradise. The German version is called Schlaraffenland, and I'm going to read you some things about Schlaraffenland, which I want to be honest, in my more cynical spirit, reminded me of some things going on now. You can decide whether it has the same effect on you. There's a land called Schlaraffenland, well known to the lazy. It lies 3 miles beyond Christmas, and he who wants to seek it out has great feats to accomplish. He must eat through a mountain of millet gruel. There must be 3 miles of it. Well, pause here to say that many of these fool's paradises you had to reach through some disgusting rite of passage, and millet was far from the worst. There were others that were like plowed your way through excrement. Anyway, you get through 3 miles of millet gruel, and then he'll find himself in the self-same Schlaraffenland, whose riches are so renowned. Its houses are thick with yarns of flax, its doors and window sashes made of gingerbread, the walls and floors are made of bacon bread, its balconies from pork sausages, and each house is surrounded by a fence made of roasted sausages. Its fountains flow with Madeira wine running straight into the mouth. Pastries hang from fir trees, just where here they would bear cones. For a big lie, one receives a crown. Though to be clear, one should not be so seen, for one must be moderate in his reason. He who makes use of his reason and wit will receive no respect in this land. A man who shows cultivation and honor will be driven from the land, and he who works diligently with his hands will be forbidden from entering Schlaraffenland. He who's worthless and has no will to learn will be a big success in this realm, and the laziest of all will, when recognized, be crowned king of the land. He who's wasteful, wild, and stupid, crude and senseless at every occasion, he will be made into a prince. He who proudly battles with the Leberwurst will be elevated to knighthood, and he who pays attention to nothing more than eating, drinking, and sleeping, he will be turned into a count. He who's foolish and incompetent will in this land be an aristocrat. He who lives in such a way will go far in Schlaraffenland. All right. Any questions or comments before we stop for today? Yes, Stephen.
I find it so interesting, the eternal, like all the different concepts of eternal life, as far as like, it sounds like there's really not any single thread that you could say each one of these has at least a piece of. Does it seem like that, or is there a few things that seem like?
There are certainly a few that pop up pretty much every time, like natural beauty. Almost all of them are a garden or an island or a forest. And except for the one St. Brendan visited, Megmount, all of them include feasting, and eternal youth is a big one, or at least living forever. But yeah, it's interesting to me the ones, interestingly, almost all of them include labor. Like we were discussing this morning, none of these are just sitting around doing nothing. Even the ones like Elysian, where you don't have to work, you can work. Like you can farm, or you can just take the food that's growing naturally. So they all at least offer the possibility of doing meaningful work. I guess meaningful, although if you don't have to do it, I guess.
What does that mean?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people choose to grow vegetable gardens, and you don't have to do that. You can just spend your money to buy vegetables. It's much more convenient. So lots of people choose to do it anyway.
Yeah.
They find other.
Yeah, I mean, because we were discussing this morning that the vision of heaven as a place where you just, I mean, that the secular version or the joke around it is just sitting on a cloud with a heart. But even Christians will think like seriously, for eternity, I'm just going to like worship. I'm just going to sing for all of eternity in the same room. And it's hard to think of that as good kind of heaven.
What was the one that you can basically come in as a giant potato and then you get rewarded?
You can come in what?
You're just a giant potato basically. And
I don't know.
The one that you were just reading about? Is that
Yeah,
what
so
the
you're a
joke
bomb
one?
basically.
Oh, Sharon Autenrieth. Yeah.
Which one was that?
Is that the one you're aiming for?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody pick your paradise. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna comment how it's funny that idea of a eternity exists because the worldview seems to be the opposite of that. You have to earn your way to becoming something great.
Well, I think that's what it's making fun of, and it reminds me of the caricatures that you will sometimes see of, you know, people who are advocating for Medicaid for all. They just want everyone to be able to sit around and do nothing and get everything, and you know,
Like
that
it
it's-
even goes against that I don't remember the term, but that story that was brought up, the Jews brought up, about the parable of those guys having a talent. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't remember what
Parable of the
exactly.
talents.
Yeah, but like the first two guys or whatever, they basically got in, and the last guy was like, well, I didn't do anything.
It's interesting to contrast that parable with the parable of the workers in the vineyard, though. Do you remember that one? Where
No.
the landowner goes out in the morning and hires some workers.
Oh, right.
And then, like 3 other times, and the last time is almost at the end of the day.
Yeah, they're only working for like an hour or something,
Yeah.
but they all get paid the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, and then the guys who are working all day complain about it, and then the guy who was hiring is like, "What business is this of yours? I can
Yeah.
I
I'm
can be
paying
as
you
generous.
what I
Yeah,
pay.
I'm paying you. I can be as generous as I want."
Right.
Isn't that similar to the prodigal son as well, where one person goes out and squanders something and is still equally accepted? Or they're not necessarily the bad person in that parable.
Right. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. They're definitely not the villain in that story.
The person that complains about them is the...
I don't always need to lean towards that ideal paradise of you can be a potato and or whatever, but I just find in life that I get annoyed at the fact that like for instance I tried working at Woodman's at one point overnight, and they had this thing where you had to do so much at a certain pace, otherwise they didn't want you, basically. And that just triggered me. And so now, I don't know if it's because of that, or maybe I had this mental thinking beforehand. And it probably Woodman's probably exacerbated that thinking of mine, but I'm just like super almost I wouldn't want to say paranoid or just like I guess self-conscious about like future bosses or future jobs having that view of their employees, and so it doesn't really help me get along with supervisors or whatever, because or Mr. White said it.
That's a good
Yeah.
one.
It's like,
You should use that with your bosses sometimes. With the kind of call down from under my butt.
yeah, it's just like, please, like, let us all work at our own pace. And
Yeah, and I know what you're saying, like, if you get a really specific quota and, like, really specific requirements, it really takes away some of the, I don't know if I'd say joy, but satisfaction of working.
yeah, like I come here
yeah,
because I need a job, not so I can perform and compete. Like, I can't compete.
Yeah, and like any job, if it's a decent job, it'll give you, the satisfaction of the, doing work and being productive, but like, having really specific requirements like that, it really kind of sucks out the satisfaction.
Yes, Stephen?
We might dig into this more in our discussion of the dispossessed. But they have their society is interesting in that the word they made their own new language. The word they have for work is the same word they have for play. And in this society, they talk about, the capitalistic society next door and how you would, what is your greatest impulse to do a good job? Is it to just get paid? And is that a greater impulse than doing it because you want to do it? And then which one creates better, a better work or play? And I think that's actually really interesting as far as like, what jobs have I done a good job at, and what jobs have I done the bare minimum at? Right? And does it, and how does it balance like that? I think that concept of play and work is really interesting.
Isn't that the thing that they say? Some people will say, okay, you go to work to pay for what you do after work.
Yes,
Right?
that is correct.
Then there's the other one where, if you do what you love,
Right.
you'll never work a day in your life.
I never worked a day in my life. That's what I did for a decade of my life. And then I found out that what I loved turned into work, and that was kind of went backwards.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, even if you find a meaningful job that you feel is meaningful, there's still responsibilities that are involved with it. There's
Yeah.
still things that you have to do that aren't your favorite part of the job.
Yeah, that's why I hesitated to say, the joy, it's more just the satisfaction of, doing
The
a good
bigger
job.
picture.
Yeah, it's not so much joy, it's more satisfaction.
Yeah. Well, I there are jobs. I work as a chaplain in assisted living centers, and I would say that most of the people who work there enjoy working with, like, in senior care. But those jobs are hard. You probably understand this. I mean, you're a middle-aged woman giving showers to people who weigh more than you do, and housekeeping, cleaning up, after people who can't clean up after themselves. And they still find meaning in the work. But I think if your bosses treat you like a cog in the machine, which is way too common now, it takes the joy out of it. And the kind of quotas, really, there's a nightmare kind of stories coming out of companies like Amazon that just treat people like not just cogs, but disposable cogs. So, and most of the places we talked about come from a time when, unless you were wealthy, day-to-day survival was just brutally hard. So it's interesting that their afterlife vision still contains work, but it's like work that you enjoy or work that you can kind of get out of when you want to. Yeah.
In the Bible, it talks about, when you come in, he gives you a new name, right? That only you know. And if you look at what a name means allegorically, because there's a lot of this in the scripture, alludes to something that's hard for us on earth to understand. But it says that this new, if you know a name is actually an attribute. It's what you are, it's what you do, it's who you are. And so you're given a new attribute, a new job, a new purpose. And this is exactly aligned with what you were essentially made to do at the beginning. And in that, that new name, you're not even supposed to tell other people. Only you know it. the joy of heaven is to guess what your name is, what your purpose is, what your thing. And so you're contributing in heaven, you're doing something, you have a purpose, but it's something unique to you.
I love that. Part of the reason I love the like thinking about the different eternities is because it shows you what that culture thought our ultimate purpose was. Right? So Valhalla, our ultimate purpose is to drink and fight. Right? And some other ones, our ultimate purpose is to be as lazy as possible. Or some other ones, our purposes. So I find that incredibly interesting to think about and talk about. I mean, and then that goes into Christianity, what we think heaven is going to be like. What is our ultimate purpose and how is it fulfilled?
To praise the Lord, but in all of its ways. You know, praising the Lord is not singing. It's a prophetic act. You know, so if you are, look at what the prophets did. They praised the Lord through action. You know, Ezekiel acted out these prophecies. Other people, they built things, you know, for the Lord. Your ultimate goal could be to create entire new universes in praise of the Lord. When we go beyond just this single thing that we can do here on Earth, what can you do in a universe that is potentially more dimensional than what we're living in now? You know, and what joy could you find? How could you praise the Lord through all of your senses, through all of the things that we do?
Kevin and I's moms have both passed, and my mom loved to sing, so I actually have no problem envisioning my mother spending her eternity singing. She won't get tired of it.